Hi, I'm Yasmin Owusu, and this is my producer, Charlie Kesenek.
But I'm your husband, and you're using all my stuff right now. What are you talking about?
So anyway, I've been looking for a one-stop shop podcast for wellness, amateur sociology, psychology, pop culture, and whatever else sparks my interest. So I created one. We are limited to no lanes. We hit the gas and get into it. This is Peaked. Press play.
Hi, welcome to Peaked Podcast. I'm Yasmin, and we're back for another week of Peaked. It's Thursday for me, and it's my regular recording day these days. And I've been on a big kick, and not just this week, but just kind of in the last months of just fabricating an insane amount of like food from scratch. Like I've been on this journey, and I don't know how much or little I've talked about it, but I'm on this sabbatical. That's my romantic way of saying I'm unemployed. I'm not gainfully employed at the moment. I quit the restaurant business like 4, maybe even pushing 5 months ago at this point. Nothing happened. I just felt like I aged out of it, and I'm 43, and I just feel like if you don't want to own a restaurant, like you got to be done sometime. I shouldn't say that. There are career waiters, and it works great for them. Doesn't work great for me. I just felt like I was working with people who are a completely different life phase than I was, and I was just getting frustrated by it, and I'd rather leave something before I'm like massively disgruntled. Anyway, so I left that, but got another project in the works with husband producer Charlie that's going to be my next job. And while that's kind of like percolating and in the works, well, I'm keeping myself busy doing this, for instance, but also just making everything. I've been making bagels. I've been making sourdough bread. I've been making, dumplings from scratch, like skins of the dumplings and everything. I've been thinking about making my own cream cheese for those bagels, and it seems like it's not going to be that hard, but we're going to figure that out. I've been, slow cooking beef and rendering the tallow and making, tallow tortillas and, tallow potato, like you name it. If I've heard of it, I'm seeing if I can just like make it myself. And I know a lot of you guys got into this kind of thing during COVID. I was in the restaurant industry, so I was an essential worker. So I just worked my regular job. I basically worked full time during COVID. So I didn't really have that time and space to like feed a starter or whatever it was. And I understand why this is happening now. I understand why like I have all this time on my hands and I'm doing this now. I really do see how maybe I wouldn't have wanted to come home from like serving tables all day and getting like, 13,000 steps or whatever the hell, and like, feeding a sourdough, sort of getting on a rolling pin and doing a bulk fermentation. I get it. But if you do have the time and or you just have more bandwidth than I do and you can do it with a full-time job, I recommend it. We're all complaining about gas prices and like considering buying a horse or a donkey. And, grocery prices are insane. And every time I say groceries now, I think about how our president found that word so weird all of a sudden. He was like, groceries, what a strange. Is it strange? I feel like we all use it a lot. Maybe you've just been rich for like your entire life and like never had to go to a grocery store. I don't know. Anyway, grocery prices are outlandish right now. And, I was just buying loaves and loaves of bread. Interesting enough during my calorie deficit when I was like trying to lose weight, and I successfully did. I ate a lot of bread. I just found that it was something that like I really enjoyed, for one, and for two, it kind of sustained my energy. So it's like a little went a longer way, like marathon runners and stuff, like they carb load, right? Either way, it worked for me. And I was like, I'm picky about bread. So I wasn't eating like Wonder Bread or whatever. I was like buying these like artisanal loaves from like local bakeries and like, the fancy stuff at H-E-B or whatever, like rosemary sourdough. And like, so it runs you like $6 to $8 a loaf. And like now I buy this industrial bag of like flour from Costco, and I'm getting like, I don't even know. I haven't finished it. So like so far, I don't know, 6 loaves of bread or whatever. So there are just these little things that you can just put a little effort in. And if you time it, it doesn't feel really laborious. And yeah, if you have the time, think about it. Think about what you could make yourself that, I understand time can also be really a commodity, but I'll leave it at that. Moving on. Also this week, in between being a one-woman industrial kitchen, I did watch the Lamar Odem documentary. It's under the Untold heading. So it's like a bunch of different documentaries about different events and people. And this one was called Untold. It's on Netflix. Untold, the life and death of Lamar Odem. just to be clear, he is still with us, but he did that medical dying where his he flatlined. I mean, he lost all vital signs and had to be revived. He was in a coma, found unresponsive in a brothel in Nevada, I believe, called the Bunny Ranch. I think it's defunct now. Either way, it details his early life, being raised by his grandma, troubled relationship with his father and his mom, and his first marriage where he had children, and then his marriage to Khloe Kardashian, and his addiction, and his death, and then his re-life, I guess. So we watched it, me and producer husband Charlie, and he does not come off well in it, first of all, but it did get me kind of thinking about, there are a lot of celebrities right now that seem to be in this moment of they've had kind of persistent issues of addiction and they're flaring up again. I mean, that sounds insane. It's like a rash, but they're relapsing or it's coming to the surface of culture. Whether we don't know how much they've been dealing with it, how much or little, I'm sure they'd cover it up if they were dealing with it actively. We don't know when they're in active addiction and when they're not, but I think a lot of us do know that addiction and recovery is not linear. So you can assume that a lot of the celebrities that you've heard have had issues in the past still do. But yeah, there've been a lot of incidents lately, and it's just kind of bringing me back to this time in the early 2000s and late 90s. I think really just early 2000s, early and mid, when a lot of young Hollywood was kind of getting arrested for DUIs. I mean, you had your Lindsay Lohan, you had, your Paris Hilton, you had your Nicole Richie, and you saw all these instances of these kind of young kids getting pulled over for DUI, having to go to mandatory recovery rehabs, ankle bracelets, all of that. And it almost feels like it's different people. I almost said characters, but these are human beings. These are different people that I'm seeing in the public eye now, even from a different age or whatever. But Lamar Odem is older than me and older than Lindsay Lohan, I'm guessing. Maybe not. But either way, different characters, different people, but it's almost like seeing them down the line. We saw these really young. I mean, some of them were barely of age. Lindsay Lohan was so young during this period. And, she seems to be doing really well now. She's had her nonlinear trajectory with addiction. She seems to be in a good place now. But it's almost like seeing some version of what happens down the line if this kind of continues, if this doesn't get reined in, and with Lamar Odem. So I was aware of him before this documentary. I'm not a huge sports or basketball fan necessarily, but I do know he played for the Lakers. He played alongside Kobe Bryant. He was an accomplished basketball player, right? And that I knew. I saw him on Keeping Up with the Kardashians, and that's, how I found out about him. He was married to Khloe Kardashian for years. And he was on the show frequently. And now we find out that he wanted to be on the show. He was very into being famous. And, it almost seems as though he maybe wanted to hook up with Khloe Kardashian because he craved fame. But I remember my impression of him when I was young, watching him be married to Khloe. It was that he seemed like a nice enough guy. I couldn't get a real read. His scenes were very just centered around, I don't know, their relationship and them being cutesy together. But I got this feeling that he felt infantilized, and not by other people. He felt like a person who infantilizes himself. I didn't have the verbiage for it when I was in my early 20s necessarily. I just thought he was kind of a baby man. The way that she'd always be Lamb likes this and he likes candy and he needs this. It just felt like she was overly catering to this 8-foot tall baby. And it bugged me. That's probably just kind of how I'm wired. I just, I don't know. Ick is even a weak word. I kind of, abhor. I do not like people who act not the full grown adults they are and don't seem to be able to or don't seem to be willing to just take care of themselves. So he kind of bugged me in that way. And I do remember an interesting scene with him on Keeping Up with the Kardashians, this first version, this older version, pre-Hulu, where he had some dental work done or something, which, by the way, again, it was like he's rotting out a tooth because he's a little baby. He's not doing anything about it. He's not saying anything about it. And it's like Kim and Chloe need to like force him to go to the dentist like he's 5, 8-foot baby, right? But anyway, he is convinced to do this dental work. And so he has to take some kind of substance or whatever for pain management or maybe sedation. I don't remember which. But either way, when he was on it, and I know that the effects are similar for everyone and everyone feels swimmy and kind of silly and funny, but he was really into it. And he was like, ooh, this is the good shit. Like he was just like feeling it. And like we knew he had issues of addiction in the past. It was very talked about, like when he was young, when he was back in his neighborhood, he had problems of addiction, right? So like we thought of this as being his like super distant path. But, you know, it was pretty young. There actually wasn't that much space between that period in his life and this marriage. I mean, they got married when they were fairly young. Either way, I remember it kind of giving me this like, that doesn't seem good. Like this guy has had issues of addiction and now he's taking this drug. He's really enjoying it. Like in what world do you just like take that, feel that, and then just like go back to your regular sober life as like a you know, at some time full-blown addict, right? So I remember thinking that felt kind of like yikes. And you know, it seems like that held water a little bit because, you know, Khloe Kardashian does participate in that documentary, and she, among other people, including Lamar himself, detail how he went back and forth with his addiction. I mean, he certainly was not clean for all of those years. He would disappear for periods of time, go off to a hotel, do some heavy using, cheat all over town. And I guess like he says his big substance was Coke. It seems like he might be using Coke as a kind of cleanup job for crack. And I understand people, there's a more negative connotation, and some of that is kind of racially driven between like Coke and crack. Essentially, crack, I guess, is just like Coke cut with other things, right? It's just like less pure and expensive Coke. Either way, it seems like he was doing crack, basically. Chloe says so, and I believe what she's saying. And yeah, he doesn't like that word, but either way. It does seem like he was the kind of addict too. Like he was an alcoholic as well. It seemed like he would just do anything he'd get his hands on to some extent. When he's having these bouts in hotel rooms, it's just like whatever was there. And this was off and on for years. I mean, she would have to like track him down, and like, you know, random women are calling being like he's ODing in this hotel room, and it was a mess. It sounds like it was an absolute nightmare and a mess. And she was so young, and I'm sure she was really not super educated. And because she's trying to hide it basically from her family and protect him from like the press and whatever. So she's not very supported in it, and is probably not getting all the information on how to deal with it. And she has no idea how to deal with it. So a lot of what she's doing, I'm sure a lot of people would class as enabling. But she just thought of it as like trying to take care of someone she loved. I mean, much good that did her. He seems completely like he's not contrite at all. He doesn't seem grateful that this woman nursed him through his coma when she was already broken up with him for the cheating all over town and the, you know, whatever. And after he finally regained his functions, his, you know, he was able to talk and walk around and move again. She got him a house, you know, made sure there was staff there to take care of him, was having groceries delivered. And he consequently decided to start doing crack in that house. She caught him, kicked him out. And, you know, he doesn't take a whole lot of responsibility for all of that. And like, you know, we do understand that addiction, you know, it has its behaviors, and you can maybe say they're separate from like your regular self, but he strikes me as someone who maybe lacks empathy and accountability across the board. I mean, his treatment of his kids, his discarding of his own family. When he got married to Chloe, I think in the beginning he was clean. I mean, you're getting drug tested when you're playing for the Lakers, right? So at least he's able to keep sobriety for these extended periods of time when he's in training and when he's working, essentially. So even in that period, he chooses not to have his grandma who raised him at his wedding because he just wants, you know, famous people to be there. And when the Lakers won, I almost said the Super Bowl. This is how much of a sports fan I am. When they won the playoffs, his kids wanted to come to the parade, and he's in some room just too messed up to barely even get up. And when he finally does get propped up to go to this parade, he kind of ghosts them, and like they just are heartbroken. And it seems like he was kind of a deadbeat in general in terms of, I don't know if financially what he was, but in terms of showing up and being a regular presence. And it doesn't seem like he was great in that area. And it doesn't seem like he's sorry. Like he really does not come off well. And apparently, according to Chloe, she just recently did a podcast episode with her friend Malika. Apparently he felt like he could berate her after this, her going on this documentary basically for him, to bring more eyeballs onto it, to bring more interest to it, to make it more successful, which she's just always helping this big fat baby man. And nothing's ever enough. And I just was really put off by him in general. And I also think a lot of what I want to talk about with this kind of crop of, celebrities in the public who are dealing with, addiction and ongoing addiction in the public eye, some of them for many, many years. Some of them are child stars. They've been dealing with it since they're kids, and now they're, in their 30s, whatever. The way the people around them are being talked about gives me pause. I'm no addiction expert, but I have watched a lot of, what's it called? Oh, it was this show on A&E, Intervention. I've watched a whole lot of Intervention. I've actually personally been present for a couple of interventions too, just of people that I know. And I think that people are massively uneducated about what enabling is and what is the right protocol when people are in active and persistent addiction. It's not Chloe like abandoning Lamar or like kicking him out of her house. It was causing him to have a comfortable place to use, and just like, he had no reason. He has no rock bottom there, right? Like the idea of rock bottom essentially is like, it puts so much pressure on your life that this addiction kind of collapses because you're just like, their words are sick and tired of being sick and tired, right? That's not going to happen if you have a mansion and staff and you can basically like, Uber Eats your crack, right? So I think it's fair to say you deal with it differently, whatever, but any professional, Al-Anon people, they would say that it needs to come from the person. They need to really think they need help. You can't force them. You can't, embrace them, love them, set them up with like a nice situation into getting help. Like essentially it's probably better for them to have a stressful situation. And there just seems to be like not enough empathy, I think, for the people who have like tried to help protect and get people sober better, right? So some of the people that have been cropping up in the news for, this ongoing addiction I'm talking about right now are like Natasha Lyonne, for example. So she's an actress that has been around for quite a while. I mean, my earliest awareness of her was Slums of Beverly Hills, which is like an indie movie that did really well. And she was in that. I think she was like in a couple, like maybe one like Woody Allen movie. I think a lot of people know her for Orange is the New Black, but I consider that to be pretty late in her career. She was kind of like an indie darling in the early 2000s, late 90s. But anyway, I think people who know of her have been aware that she's had issues with addiction in the past. In fact, of all people, Michael Rappaport was a friend of hers at one point, and I guess they had a falling out. He was her landlord at some point. This sounds very chaotic in LA, but he rented her some kind of condo or unit, I don't know, and he went into Paper or Nylon magazine, one of those two, kind of like, cool indie magazines at the time, and had this whole article where he like showed photos of how she trashed a place, was like, she's basically a crackhead. She's like an addict. Like she steals, she lies, whatever. So that was like him just like airing her out. And I think that's how I found out that she was like an addict. I don't think I knew that before. And, there have been whiffs off and on throughout her career of like, is she sober? Is she not sober? And fairly recently she had been looking like, I guess like, 4 months ago, she'd been looking really thin. It's the age of Ozempic. So like my mind was like, oh, maybe she did the shot or whatever. But I think a lot of people were like, is she using again? And she did come out and say that she had relapsed around the time people were concerned about her weight loss. But she said that she was back on track. And then she made an appearance even more recently, like this month sometime at an award show, like a week ago, maybe. And her behavior was, it seemed a little erratic. It was a little bit Cara Delevingne during that period, right? And so, that I was kind of like, this doesn't, look right. And it wasn't right. She has recently been taken off of an airline for seeming intoxicated. I think that is the allegation that's being made. She was intoxicated on a plane and she had to be grounded. But yeah, so we haven't really heard what her line on that is, but I guess we can assume that, relapse is ongoing and we know recovery is not linear, right? And then we have the small matter of Shaia LaBeouf terrorizing New Orleans. So Shaia LaBeouf was a child actor. He was in the movie Holes, and then he was also really, really young when he was in the Transformer movies. And, he's also been a really great indie actor. He's talented. I mean, anyone would say that. He met his wife and off and on girlfriend, Mia Goth, on the set of a Lars von Trier movie called Nymphomaniac when she was really young, by the way. I think she was like barely 18 years old. But anyway, they hooked up. And he's been dogged by, rumors of his addiction. And he actually detailed his addiction in a movie that he wrote. And it was about his dad and himself. And you kind of see a lot of his issues that are brought up in there. And he's also, been outed for being an abusive partner by FKA Twigs, who's a singer an artist who he dated, and she has sued him for defamation. And also, the abuse claims were made public. And of course, I believe them. He's more or less admitted that what she is saying is true without being like, take me to jail now, like without incriminating himself, like beyond repair. I think he's basically like, when he's been asked about her and her allegations, she's like, I was not good to that woman. She's a good woman. He's basically saying, I did that shit, right? Anyway, he has been off and on the wagon from what we can see. And he's definitely off the wagon now. He's been running around New Orleans, going to every bar in sight. He was there for Mardi Gras. He moved himself there, it seems, to relapse, to drink all over town. Him and his off and on girlfriend / wife who has a kid with are not together. It seems like she was like, you need to get yourself clean and we can't be together while you're in this state. And he's gone on a podcast talking about, I don't think I need to get clean. Like, I don't think it works for me. And look, I understand how maybe some people find it funny, or maybe you find it refreshing that he's just like, I don't care. I'm going to drink. I'm just living life, whatever it is. This is a person who, when he has been sober, has like told everyone how, his addiction has like run rampant on his life and has been a ruinous thing. So that now that he's like in active addiction, I don't think we need to take him at his word that it's like totally chill and like he's just in an art thing right now. He's not an art thing. He's in a relapse. He's in active addiction. And it's not cute and it's not funny. And if you're on my side of things where you're just like, listen, this is a really troubled man. He's not safe. He hasn't been safe with his partners. I think some more accountability needs to happen there. If you're on that side of things, that's whatever. And if you're on the other side of things where you're like, I like Shaia LaBeouf. I think he's really talented. I think we should give him a break. You should still not be celebrating his relapse. Sober him would not be celebrating his relapse. It is not a good sign that he's running around, getting wasted, getting arrested left and right. He's been arrested like 3 times since he's been in New Orleans. Public intoxication, trying to get in fights with people, whatever it is. He has to have like mandatory, some kind of mandatory recovery now. He's got an ankle bracelet. Like, this is a sign of somebody's life unraveling. So like, let's not take it as a fun little jaunt. Like, I know that everyone's read like, Hunter S. Thompson, whatever, and they want to romanticize this. It's not romantic to be an active addiction, whether you're on his side or not. This is not something to celebrate. And then we have Tiger Woods. I think a lot of us have been aware that he's had some issues over time. I mean, we know the incident with his ex-wife, Elin Nordgren, where it basically was uncovered that he had kind of an insane amount of affairs. And his wife found out, and she chased his car with a golf club and smashed out the back windows and called his mistresses and Lord knows what else. I mean, 20s of women came out with their stories about having affairs with him. But aside from this sex addiction. It seems like over the years he had developed an Ambien addiction or dependency, and maybe some other opioids and painkiller stuff as well, mainly pill things. And this could have been the result. I don't know if it was an Untold, but I watched a documentary that he participated in about him, which talked a lot about the different surgeries. He's had the different injuries. Like he's had some crazy, just gnarly knee injuries and surgeries and whatever, to continue like playing golf or whatever. And I wonder if some of these substance dependencies come from some of the pills he had to take to manage pain, and maybe some sleep issues that crop up from having such like chronic pain, right? Either way, he's had a few DUIs at this point. He had one quite like a while ago where he was found in a car driving erratically. And then recently he rolled his SUV and, no alcohol was found, but hydrocodone was found in his pocket. So, I think this is, they're alleging that he was impaired by that. And, some car or body cam footage was released of him sweating profusely, glassy eyes. And, I was just swiping through my TikTok and an image popped up of just him in the back of this cruiser. And I just thought it was really, really in poor taste to publicize those videos. I mean, if people's attorneys need to see them, great. I don't think the public needs to see that. I don't think it's really any of our business to see it necessarily. He should be held accountable for driving impaired, absolutely, and go through that process. But I didn't get any satisfaction from seeing him in that condition. And I don't really know what purpose it serves to humiliate him that way. Either way, it seems like he's been dealing with this off and on. And we had a similar incident with Justin Timberlake fairly recently where he was pulled over and his was a drinking thing. And, he said, I only had one martini, which who knows, but one martini is a whole lot of alcohol anyway. When I was, drinking it, that was my drink of choice. And trust me, you do not want to drive a car after one martini. That's a cocktail that is all liquor, by the way. Maybe a little olive brine. But yeah, again, some of the verbiage, like, I'm on a world tour and people can find this stuff funny. And, he's had a previous incident where he was, partying with his actor friends after hours and maybe was seen being inappropriate with other women. And I just remember he didn't quite look like himself. And he looked, a little bit like he might, the lights are on and no one's home. And it just seems like maybe he is dealing with an alcohol thing. And the dialogue around it just seems a little bit consuming someone's pain and a little bit jokey with it in a way that I don't like. And, Britney Spears also has been pulled over for DUI recently and is in voluntary care. She's just come out of her conservatorship a few years ago. And it seems like she's still dealing with a lot of things that maybe necessitated that. But either way, so a lot of these people that I'm talking about, we've been hearing about their addictions off and on for years, right? And then we have some, that you'd hear about a long time ago. And then all of a sudden something like we have a Phillip Seymore Hoffman where you heard that he had addiction issues when he was really young. And then all of a sudden he, is not with us anymore, right? And I think sometimes the dialogue lacks a seriousness around this. And part of it is that I don't think our culture is comfortable enough talking about when people who are addicts have relapses. I think to normalize that and for people to really understand how common that is. And it's actually way more common than someone going to rehab once and kicking like an addiction forever. I mean, that is a rare stat for sure. It's actually way more normal. And in my own life experience, I've known way more people who, they get in recovery and they have some slips and they fall, they call it, they go out and they go off and on the wagon and, they struggle with it because, it's seated in other, it's for the most part, it comes from other issues. Right. And so here you have this substance, this crutch that you think helps you deal with your issues. And now you're trying to remove that, and here are all your issues, right? So it's like this cyclical thing of like, I need the drug to deal with my issues, but my issues, I can't deal with them without right? So maybe I'm just feeling like we're getting desensitized, one, to hearing about these people struggling with addiction. We think it's this funny thing of like, oh, there goes Tiger Woods again, getting pulled over. Let's look at the video of him sweating. Oh, he's balding. I think way too many of us have had experiences with people in our real lives, or, just in general, like maybe you live in a neighborhood, there's a lot of addicts, to have such a glib and not serious reaction to this happening to human beings. So I think that desensitization, we really need to like take a good look inward and see why we think it's funny that like Shaia LaBeouf is like running around relapsing all over, New Orleans. He has like little kids. It's going to affect them. Right. So like, it's kind of serious stuff. And also the dialogue around like, say, a Khloe Kardashian, or like just people in these people's lives and how they handle it, that needs to shift. I think putting so much blame and impetus, and like Lamar Odem being like, why would anyone give me crack? What do you mean? Why would you do it? Why would you do it? Personal responsibility. And like, just also every word on how to deal with addiction is that you need to set boundaries. You need to not enable. You need to, hold yourself, like make sure that you are taking care of yourself. You can't, become enslaved to like this person's like cycle of addiction. It doesn't help them. Right. And like recently, it came out that Kim Richards, so Kyle Richards is on the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, and she has a sister, Kim Richards, who was on the show for a while. And we saw her deal with her addiction issues. She talked about them somewhat. Kyle kind of outed her as an alcoholic, like the first season that she was on. But we did, we heard about her relapses. We saw it when she was on the show. And, I don't know how wrong Brandy was about what she might have been doing in a certain bathroom. It was clear that she was dealing with addiction and kind of lifelong. She was a child star, much like Shaia LaBeouf, much like Britney Spears. Yeah, Natasha Lyonne was really young too. Tiger Woods was very young when he started his career, if not a child. I mean, he was a child when he started playing golf. Interesting. Either way, we saw her kind of, try to get herself together, fall down. The very normal, very expected non-linear nature of lifelong addiction, right? And recently, Kyle Richards has had to kick her out of a house that I guess she owned, and she was either leasing, or I don't know what their arrangement was. But if she's able to kick her out, I'm guessing in some capacity that house belongs to Kyle. And I did see a lot of dialogue around that was like, she's cold-hearted. She's always been a terrible sister. And listen, I don't know. I don't know them personally, but I would not, in my position, come out of my face to say that this person is a bad person or a bad sister because of how they deal with someone who is dealing with such serious addiction over their entire lives, that has kids, that has so many high stakes. And, they've had so many ups and downs in the relationship. And, at certain times, Kim has said that she has a great relationship with Kyle, and she's been a support and she's been a help. And at other times, and it seems like when she's addicted, then she's like, you stole my house. Dealing with someone who is in active addiction is hard. And what you're supposed to do to help them get better is certainly not allow them to have a really comfortable place to, get wasted. And so if Kyle had to kick her out to help her get closer to rock bottom, even just to set boundaries for herself, so she's not also like harmed and in the trenches, like you do have to save yourself to some extent. You can't give up your entire life to someone who's committed to their addiction, and you cannot force them to just, be done with it. It's just not how it works. And I think part of it, like I said, is the desensitization our society has from seeing all these like young kids. When I was younger, all the Lindsay Lohan running around, like the ankle bracelet. Oh, it's so funny that she has an ankle bracelet. She's partying with it. The desensitization over time is causing a bit of like a lack of alarm and lack of empathy. And it's crazy that is still happening, considering we have lost people. Like Heath Ledger died, Amy Weinhouse died. I mean, these are all people who basically succumbed to their addictions. Like they died from their addictions. Brittany Murphy. I mean, these are young people who we saw going through really similar things. We saw similar alarm bells, like a Natasha Lyonne. And I would hate for any of us to down the line have had this kind of attitude towards it. And then, someone loses their life. Part of it is that, and part of it, I think, is just a real lack of education. And maybe people should watch more Intervention like I did. But yeah, I watched Intervention like it was my job when I was in my early 20s. I can't tell you why. I just watched it a lot. I'm not sure. The mailman came and I just lost my train of thought. But either way, the lack of education about addiction and what you're supposed to do and, what the protocols are when you're dealing with someone with it. And also just how it just has its twists and turns, and it's not a simple thing to deal with, and nobody has a playbook for it necessarily. And the one they have definitely does not involve just catering to the people and just losing yourself in it. So it just really, there's just something about hearing all these stories that are happening right now and thinking about all these young women in Hollywood, mostly women. I mean, there were definitely men at the time, but the women are coming to mind. Just thinking about them and how, Britney Spears was one of them. And we're seeing how poorly that turned out. Amanda Bynes, we're seeing how poorly that is unfolding. And I just really hope we can see more people in Hollywood be more honest about the trajectory and what they go through. And we don't just all of a sudden see, that someone dies or, and partially it's our fault as a culture because we're not ready to hear that, all these people that maybe people idolize, are not just all better. We're not ready to not see it all tied up with a bow. And it's causing them to kind of go in the shadows with it. And the next thing we hear is they're gone. So I found that trend disturbing. And I think, the personal accountability element is a big one in it. And I do want to see less of people's loved ones getting, dragged through the mud for how they deal with it. Cause Lord knows you wouldn't know how to deal with it. I've seen my friends go through it with their family members who have addictions, and they definitely do love them. And you definitely can burn out, be exhausted, not know what to do next. And it's just not that simple. But yeah, with that, I'll leave you, and we'll talk about maybe something lighter next week, or maybe not. These are crazy times. Anyway, have a good one.